afternoon here with us. For those who don't know, I'm Patricia Ogunfaber and I do a podcast show to help people maximise property values. It's called Maximising Property Values. It's on all your popular platforms, Apple and Spotify and Google and Audible, all of them. But you can click on the link above, and if you see your favourite listening app, you can subscribe to it through there. That, however, normally is a monologue, but I've now added a guest series, and my guest today is Ian Walmsley. We are going to try to get to know Ian a little bit better today, and I'm nosy, Ian, so get ready, get ready, get ready. So, who is Ian? The Ian that I know is a very knowledgeable and generous man, but that's not all. He's a third generation funeral director whose grandfather built one of the first estates in Basildon. The love of developing runs through his veins. And let me not forget, he's also the planning geek. He's also known as the planning geek, and he is the planning geek. So, Ian, welcome to Maximising Property Values.
Thank you.
But before we go into your main property activities, so this is the nosy part of me coming out.
Right.
There's always like 2 to 3 questions that people aren't really expecting, and I never notify them in advance what these questions are. And that's the fun of it for me. So your first question is this. What's the weirdest thing that you experienced whilst working as a funeral director? And then your second question.
Don't ask me too many questions at once. I'm used to multiple questions. Otherwise, I'll get to the third one and I'll have forgotten the first one. So,
all right,
first question. Yes. I mean, what's the weirdest? I suppose when you. I mean, obviously, being a funeral director, and I'll hasten to add, I'm no longer in the business. We sort of sold out many years ago, but the thing is that you're often dealing with obviously bereaved people and upset people and who experience that in different ways, and you always have to act professionally and respect the family and everything else. However, it doesn't always work like that, to be honest. And I suppose the two things that spring to my mind is in a way doing what the family wanted. And the two instances I can think, which I'll briefly say, is first of all, I was conducting a jazz funeral. Someone in the jazz band had died, and we'd gone to it as a burial. So we had the service in the chapel of the cemetery. And then normally we would put the coffin back into the hearse and, drive her to the grave, etc., etc. However, on this occasion, they wanted to walk between the chapel and the thing. Now, what they had was a full jazz band playing. And I'm sure you can picture the sort of scene, me up front with my top hat and tails on, my stick with me and everything else, and sort of behind me, coffin, then the jazz band, then all the mourners. And it was becoming harder and harder, this walk. And I was having to sort of walk, and I could feel that I could sense that obviously the band were playing, jazz music, very upbeat and all wonderful stuff. And I could feel that the guys carrying the coffin were sort of jigging around a bit. And I thought, do you know what, blow her this, because everyone else behind was sort of dancing along. So there was me, middle of a London cemetery, and I thought, oh, do you know what? I'm just going to have fun here. So there was me dancing around in the front and just sort of giving it all. And to be honest, I was thanked so much afterwards because it was exactly what the family wanted, and so to them it was great. And I suppose the other weird thing was I was. For those of you that know Acton, that was where my branch was at the time, and roughly between sort of Shepherd's Bush and Ealing, if anyone knows West London. and we had a rather large funeral. It was a West Indian lady, gentleman, that died first of all, and I was tasked with doing the funeral, and I knew it was going to be a very, very big funeral, so I sort of got the sort of local police to assist and what have you. And you always have to have client confidentiality, and so I went into the news agents that was across the road, and someone said, "Oh, I've heard there's royalty on the funeral here today," and I said, "I'm very sorry, sir. I'm afraid I can't comment as to who may or may not be at the funeral. As you can't." So that meant yes, there was, uh, and all of a sudden they were like sort of when I came out of my office a bit later on to sort of start things, there was probably about five photographers there all waiting, and with lenses poised. But what actually happened on that was the police shut down the Uxbridge Road in Acton, and basically for about an hour they wouldn't let a single vehicle through the Uxbridge Road whilst we were having the funeral and or the church service and everything else. So that was the day that I actually sort of we had. I mean, I must admit we did have a sort of few hundred people in attendance, so it was quite big. Um, but we basically sort of, I managed to stop the traffic from beyond Shepherd's Bush in one way and beyond Ealing in the other way for about an hour, and then I had sort of police escorts from Gulliver Wells. And yes, it was a bit of a different day, and I think I got home about 4 o'clock in the morning from memory because I got invited back to the house, and it was a very, very long day, but very enjoyable. And then I got invited to actually sort of do the next one, and they wanted me back over in Jamaica to do a funeral over there. But yes, it's all about giving service to the family, and I suppose in a way that carries through into my property journey as well. You're giving service to your clients and to your people that you sell these properties to, which as I do as a developer, will go into that. But yeah, that's so. So hope that answers your first question.
Oh my goodness. Ian, I've been killing myself with laughter behind my mic. Oh my goodness, what fun! Because when you were telling us about the first one and you said it was becoming difficult to walk, I'm
Mm,
thinking, why? Is it the music
mm,
or was it something else? And then when you elaborated, oh, I could just picture that scene.
yeah.
Oh, how much fun!
Yeah,
Um,
just sort of taking the top hat off and just sort of, yeah, just giving people what they want in life. So yeah.
and the thing is, I guess it takes a funeral really for the people left behind to actually appreciate that they're alive. And whilst we're alive,
Indeed,
there's hope. Um,
indeed.
when you're dead, it's over. But
Yeah.
until then, you
Hmm.
know, yeah. Oh, great stuff, great stuff. And then, so your second question is this: have you ever experienced extreme temptation before? In what circumstances, and how did you overcome if it ever happened?
Great temptation
In
in.
any
I didn't
in
quite
any
catch this.
in any context, but not property.
Great temptation, blimey. Um,
I'm loving this.
I thank you. Great temptation. I suppose. I suppose the when I sort of I had to give up business. I had to give up my job because of illness. Um, and so I suppose in a way my only real choice was to work for myself. This was back in the 90s. And you know I suppose I don't know if it is being tempted. It wasn't a lot of choice really, to be honest, Patricia. And it was um I just had to. I'm not a big one for temptation, to be honest. Apart from holidays and trips and goodness knows what else I do to relax. But I wouldn't say it's necessarily temptation. No, I'm struggling here, Patricia. I'm struggling, and I'm not often lost for words, as I'm sure you know.
Well, do you know,
Yeah.
it just means that you're good. Because when I was thinking about this question, because I do write them down, because otherwise I won't remember what I thought I was going to ask someone. And as I was writing it down, I thought, hmm, I wonder if this is the right question for Ian. But I'm glad that I did ask it, because you're pausing and you're trying to think of something. Oh, I'm telling you,
Mm,
I was enjoying that. I tell you, I've got a wicked streak in me. Oh, okay, great stuff. So we know a bit more about you that we won't find on the internet and we won't find on LinkedIn. We are
indeed.
hearing about it here, which is part of what I love about these guest series. So thank you once more for being my guest on this. Now, let's talk about your property
What's the
activities.
third question? I thought there were three. You know.
No, I know. I thought I'd
Oh,
leave
there
it
were
at
two.
two.
All right.
Leave it at
All
two
right.
for you.
Fair
I
enough.
do two to three, but I thought, do you know, Ian's got so much to share. Let me not take up his time asking my
All right.
questions and being nosy. um,
All right.
right. So, how many units are you currently developing, and what challenges have you faced and overcome in those? I'm talking about the current ones.
Yes, sure. I mean, the active sites that I've got on the go at the moment, down in I'm first of all I'm I call myself a developer who loves planning, but as far as developing is concerned, our main sites are in the southwest of England. So if you're listening and you're not actually from the UK, then that's sort of down towards the bottom in the sort of the toe of the country, if you like, or the hill. Depends which way you look at it. Um, and we have in South Devon our site down there. We've sort of constructed 22 as a conversion properties there. On that particular site, we've got a further planning for a further 9 dwellings, although to be honest, 5 of those we're not actually going to probably build out now, despite getting the planning last year for those 5. But it will convert, take off a big pitch roof and put 4 dwellings as duplex apartments above the existing flats. That should happen this coming year. Um, Elsewhere, currently building 14 bungalows in North Devon in a place called Westward Ho. Oddly, on that we're actually in 2 different towns, because the actual local political side of it, the councillors are all from Westward Ho, but Royal and Mail have given us a postcode in Northam, so we're right on the border there between the 2 towns. Um, and so we're building 14 bungalows there. Another site of ours is, I mean, that's not in construction yet, but we're going for planning. But that's a longer term thing that will end up with being about 20 apartments, high end luxury apartments, and 4 bed or 5 bed houses, and that's on the river's edge in Cornwall. So those are active sites at the moment. There are various other sites that we are getting involved in elsewhere in the southwest and elsewhere in the UK, to be honest, as well. So, but they are my main active sites at the moment.
Oh, that's more than enough for most people. So, what are you finding challenging at the moment in that area of your work? Because everyone's talking about, the prices, not just
Hmm.
materials, but
Yeah,
labour as well. How is that affecting what you're doing, if it's affecting you at all? And
it
if it's not
is. Yeah,
affecting you,
no, it's
okay.
not. It is affecting. I wouldn't be telling you the truth if it wasn't, and I always try and tell the truth in whatever answers I give, whether it be good or bad. Um, and to be honest, the last couple of years or 3 years have probably been pretty challenging, because we've obviously had COVID, unless you've been living under a rock for the last couple of years, so that has affected us. Our site kept on going. We didn't close any of the sites at all. So, but there were obviously supply issues then with people having to isolate, waiting for certain items. Perhaps, for example, we had to wait for the railings for the staircases. That was one thing that held us up. Other things, just general stuff like plaster, we had a problem with that for a while, like everyone else. So those sorts of things have been a challenge, and sort of keeping the sites going. But and currently, yes, I mean, material costs have gone up. Um, that has been a challenge with on our 14 bungalows. Our costs have risen beyond our original estimates, but also the GDV's gone up there as well. So one does to a degree balance out the other, but unfortunately, quite often the lending is quite often based upon older figures and stuff like that, and so in order to actually um, complete stuff, you often need to borrow a bit more money in the development finance, either through the bank concerned or privately. So we do work with a number of investors around the UK and abroad to facilitate that. So we look at different angles that we can cover that shortfall. But at least the GDVs have gone up, and we're already selling off plan there. So so there've been challenges, but the important thing for me as a developer is having a good team around you. I mean, Jonathan, my right hand man, is my business partner, and we work very well together. We've been working now for a few years together, and having a good team around you is critical, whether that be quantity surveyors or QSs or accountants or surveyors, whatever they are. It's just having those right people. And I often say one of the phrases I do is sort of the right people at the right time at the right price. And sometimes that costs money, and you have to have that team there to support you and to be able to go to when things aren't going right, or you need backup, or you need um, evidence on figures for QSs and all that. But it's just part of the team, to be honest. So it's challenges, but I would call them more sort of speed humps, if you like, in the journey. So instead of just motoring along at sort of 50, 60, 70 miles an hour, whatever, you have to slow down and navigate those chicanes or those speed humps to carry on your journey. So yeah.
Great stuff. Now, I had a flashed message right now and I can't find it, but the effect of it was that your site is absolutely amazing. And this person who flashed the message said they've also been referring people to your site. So, people, if you're in the room, tap on the link above my head. That is Ian's site. If you're not in the room and you're going to be listening to this on the podcast, Ian's site is www.planninggeek. So that's planning, PLANNING, geek, GEEK.co.uk, planninggeek.co.uk. So, Ian, if, say, for instance, because my memory is not very good, so I really should be writing things down, but I'm just enjoying this conversation so much. I don't feel like writing anything down. That would be too much like work. So if someone was interested in investing with you, how do they go about contacting you, and what might the process be?
To be honest, as I said before, we do work with investors, and it's not a pitch. I don't know. I actually hate pitching. It's awful, but
I know
uh,
you're not
I'm
pitching. I
I'm not.
I
I'm
I,
not.
I asked
I
you.
know. I know. Of course you did. I know. I mean, first of all, it very much depends upon the individual as to the amounts that people want to invest. Um, it's either done as a sort of a straight loan, or we do a sort of an earn and learn type thing. So we take people um, along with us, and in lieu of the sort of bigger interest amounts, they will actually sort of walk the walk with us. And as you know, Patricia, I'm someone that walks the walk and not just talks the talk. What I actually do, I document. I try and document all the time, in my sort of photographs and my drone flying and stuff like this. And I can take people along on that journey. And to be honest, I mean, I constantly hear it in clubhouse rooms, and it's already been mentioned in a couple of rooms this morning that I've been in, and that is sort of people just trying to dive in a little bit too big, too fast, and that is where you can get burnt, and that's where your sort of problems could arise. So, I think I alluded to it earlier. I one thing I enjoy is actually helping people get their own foot in the door, and helping people actually achieve things that they don't know that they can even do. And if I can, there's enough stuff around in the UK. I'm certainly can't cover it all. And if I can get them going and sort of give them the confidence, give them sort of insights into my team, and use a team possibly, and sort of just push them in the right direction, just by giving them the sort of the mindset and the confidence that I was given with my mentors. Um, and yeah, that's what I enjoy doing. So it does vary. It really does vary between individuals, as to whether, we're talking about small amount or large amounts, or whatever. And everything is customized. And I know I'm probably not answering your question straight there, but it really does depend, because at the end of the day, it must be fair for both parties. There's no point in it being stacked in my favour or my company's favour, and not being in their favour. It has to be fair and even, and that is critical. We all my companies are very ethical. Um, it's taken me a long time to build up my credibility, and that could get ruined in seconds by not giving people what they want and what they deserve and everything else. So that's important. So if that means me paying a bit more interest than I could probably get away with, then so be it. I'm happy like that. It allows me to sleep at night. So hopefully that answered that question for you, Patricia.
Wow. It so resonated with me because, again, for me, it's all about being able to sleep at night.
Hmm.
Go to bed and just have a completely restful night. Obviously, there are going to be the days when you can't, get that restful, night, because, something's not going according to plan, or, something's happened. But in the main, that for me, peace of mind, harmony in my life is just the most important thing. And that, it's the same with you. Is Well, I shouldn't be surprised. I should not be surprised, because you are someone that I do admire. So now, Ian, as the planning geek, oh, every man and his dog is talking about, um permissive development rights and all whatnot. But what I love about the internet, and I love this about the internet, is that you can actually trace when somebody started doing something. So when people reinvent themselves, I'm one of these people that likes to go to the very beginning and say, you weren't always like this. But with you, that's not the case, because you've always been in this, and you've always been into planning. So I would love to
No, I
ask
haven't.
you,
No, I
well,
haven't.
okay, fine. Okay, the
Oh,
funeral director initially, but you get what I
no, no,
mean.
no. I'm going to actually. I hate disagreeing with someone that's interviewing me, but I really didn't. I really didn't. A lot of it has been self-taught, and I'm not. It really has. I mean, the actual site itself, I started back in 2017, so we're approaching 5 years now. Um, but I mean, I often say to people, "Oh yes, I was a landlord when I was 18." What I don't then go on to say is that, you know, I wasn't involved in property apart from, working with my father to build some offices and stuff like that. I wasn't involved in property again for many, many years. Um, and, it was I only started again on this journey. I'm going to say probably I'd have to sort of check dates because I'm useless at dates. I'm going to say sort of about 7 or 8 years ago now, is when I started again, with a couple of refurbs, one in Kent and one in Lancashire. So no, it hasn't been a lifelong thing because for many years I sort of alluded to it earlier. I was quite ill with ME, and you might have heard of it, or chronic fatigue syndrome. So I had to give up work. I couldn't do a 9 to 5 or anything like that. So I tried to be self-employed for a long time, failed miserably at it. I really did. I was useless. And it wasn't until I got into property that the fire was lit within me and I had a passion. I got trained in all sorts of strategies and then became a developer and then the planning came because of the fact that in order to know what I was looking for, I had to educate myself and learn about planning from, the General Permitted Development Order, or GPDO for short, the Planning Acts, and goodness knows what else. And I just thoroughly enjoyed that. And so I created a website because one way I learn is by writing things down. And if I create a website, and I have my own server to host these on, um, and I will create that website in order to learn. And so that was really why I started it. So yeah, that's
So, Ian, this is
mm,
me just kind of like, and the way I talk. So I must apologize. But when
that's
I
right.
meant you'd been in it from the very beginning, in my mind, I'm thinking there's a timeline starting with Clubhouse. So
Mhm.
pre-Clubhouse and post-Clubhouse. And all I was alluding to was that you were in this before Clubhouse. You've not just
Mm.
come onto Clubhouse
Oh
and
no.
learned about it and reinvented yourself as an
Oh God,
expert,
blimey, no.
which so many people have done.
Mm.
From you can track their trajectory from Clubhouse. Before Clubhouse, zilch. Clubhouse, they've listened to a few people and then boom, they're an expert. So that's all I was really
I
sort of
see. I see.
going to, that I was able
No,
to
no.
track you to before
Yeah,
Clubhouse, which I should have said. You
yeah.
don't
That's fair
just,
enough.
my husband always says to me, people can't read your mind. Because
Indeed.
I say things like this and then he goes, "Oh, what do you mean?" And then I get really frustrated. I'm thinking, is it not obvious? And he goes, "People can't read your mind."
They
Anyway,
can't indeed.
okay, so um, all of this planning and stuff and permitted developments, can you just kindly take us through the thing that's just driving everyone, it seems, crazy? It's like, oh, commercial to resi, commercial to resi, commercial to resi. So
Mhm.
I'm sure lots of people would love to hear about it. Can you just take us through what people need to be aware of if they are looking to do it, or if they're already doing it, just to kind of like, just double check and make sure that they are doing it right?
Well, I mean, first of all, with permitted development, it's far more than just, yes, I mean, you've said commercial to resi, but to be honest, that is just one small part of it. And my advice is, I mean, you've got two parts really. So you've got, um, alterations to your own dwelling where you live. Um, and then you've got conversions, and they really are two different beasts, and they will apply to property people in different ways. And the biggest tip I always give people is maximize what you already have before you look beyond that. So, for example, with your residential dwelling, you have a lot of permitted development rights, as far as putting extensions on, uh, putting converting the loft perhaps or attic to to a room up there, putting a dormer on the rear, Velux type windows to the front, perhaps side extensions, all these sorts of things. It's all permitted development rights. Yes, I would caveat that by saying that yes, there is a chance that your permitted development rights may have been removed by either an Article 4 or um, a, a restriction on planning to the previous planning application. So you just have to be a little bit careful. But as a general rule, you do have pretty good rights to actually expand your own property or indeed expand a property that you've bought. So, before just thinking, oh, I'm just going to knock this down or I'm going to renovate or I'm going to convert it, have a look and think, well, what can I do with the existing building? Can I build another property to the side, or am I better putting a side extension on? You can go up to 50% of the width of the existing property as a side extension, for example. Or you can go out, depending upon whether it's detached or semi-detached, and depending upon whether you go to larger home extensions, you can go up to 8 meters in distance as a depth for a single story extension, on a detached property. So you can add a pretty sizable stuff. And the other thing is outbuildings. You can cover your curtilage, which is basically the land around your property. So that's the land at the front, side, back, etc. of your garden, if you like, all together. And you can cover that land by up to 50% for any extensions, outbuildings, and that. And quite often now, a lot of people working from home, so home offices, it's all permitted development rights, and in most cases to your household, you can just go ahead and do that. You don't need to contact the local authority. You will probably need to contact sort of building control and stuff like that, but that's not planning. That's building control, something different. But as long as you've met them, you can in most cases you can just go ahead and carry out that work. The other side of it is, as you say, is sort of changes of use or temporary uses, both of which are valuable in their different ways. But for changes of use, we are talking about taking um, things like sort of shops and restaurants and offices and stuff like that, which are all now under what's called use class E. Um, and you can actually convert those to residential dwellings subject to what is called a prior approval. Now, prior approval is okay. Let me just backtrack here a little bit for you, Patricia. The General Permitted Development Order 2015 as amended, and those two words are key there because it has been amended over 20 times, almost 25 times now. Um, that is your planning permission in effect. So the GPDO for short is your planning permission. However, for certain things, especially like changes of use, you will need a 56-day prior approval application. And this generally will cost you £100 per dwelling. Now, the prices have slowly risen over the last few years, but this will allow you to convert larger buildings or even smaller buildings for that matter into a number of dwellings. And you may only be converting it into one, you may be converting it into 10, 12, 14, whatever it might be, depending on the size. So you can look at a lot of different current uses. And for those that don't know, and I appreciate everyone is on this journey at a different stage, and there's certain things you may think, oh, what use class? What on earth's that? So the use class is the last legal use of a building within England, and I'll just hesitate that it's within England because I concentrate mainly on English planning law. Similar rules apply elsewhere in the UK and elsewhere in the world, but I have to concentrate predominantly on English planning law. So each building will have its own last legal use. And last year, we had use class E come into use, which is a very, very powerful one. And that allows us now, that contains things like restaurants, shops, offices, gyms, GPs, nurseries, stuff like this, all within use class E, and class MA conversion allows you to go from any of those to residential. So it is powerful, it is good, but again, you have to know the legislation, you have to know the words that are in the legislation to make sure that you comply, because there's no point in going all the way down and then getting your application thrown out because you've misinterpreted the rules or anything else. So yeah, just making sure you have accurate information, and yes, I mean that's what I aim to do with Planning Geek, to be honest, and try and give accurate information and guide people in the best way I can.
So, Ian, in terms of, you know, and I hope people don't think that this is like, a pitch fest, because it isn't. I honestly do think that, what you do and the services that you offer can greatly assist people who are in that area. And I know that you do consultations. So, people, if you're interested, go to Ian's website. His consultations are very affordable. If you're in development, they are extremely affordable. Let no one say, oh, that is expensive. It is not expensive. But can I just ask you, Ian, airspace rights
Mm.
and airspace developments,
Mm-hmm.
can you just talk us through, just very briefly, through those, if you're able to? Because
Yeah,
if
sure.
anything, sorry,
Yes, go on, carry on. Yes, sure. I mean,
because I was going to say,
go on. Sorry, I've interrupted you.
no, no,
Sorry.
no, 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 you go. I think I've made myself clear.
Yeah, I mean, basically, this came in probably about a year ago now, and this potentially allows you to create additional floors on top of an existing building. So there are most of it is in what's called Part 20. The GPDO is split down into 20 different components. It's not all about property. I mean, it even describes what the Her Majesty can do in on royal properties and stuff like that. It covers what mobile phone companies can do, stuff like this. So it's far beyond just conversions. And Part 20 was the latest bit to be added. And so this allows you to put items above shops, items above banks, for example, um, light industrial buildings, research and development, stuff like this. It allows you to actually put floors above those, or indeed to actually demolish existing buildings and then create on the same footprint, create that plus another couple of floors. So light industrial, for example, it allows you to actually sort of demolish that, or indeed offices, and demolish those and then rebuild that as flats and then put another couple of floors on top. You can also do it under Part 1, which is for the dwelling houses, which I mentioned earlier, extensions, stuff like that. And that is actually to take perhaps a bungalow and put an extra floor on top to make that a house. Um, that will, and then in fact you'll then have full PD rights as long as they don't get removed, and they'll be allow you to put a double-story rear extension on, side extensions, etc., etc. So you actually sort of turn that bungalow, for example, into a much larger property. However, there is a big caveat with all of these in airspace, and that is the fact that there are a lot more hoops to jump through than ordinary conversions. So whilst on paper it looks great and the permitted development rights are there, um, to all intents and purposes, it's not far short of a full application, because there are a lot of things that um, that the local authority will want to look at, overlooking loss of privacy, stuff like this that could affect neighbours around. And if you take an average estate, and I'm upstairs in my office now, and I'm just looking out the window, and I can see sort of two or three houses behind me, and whilst in theory those could have an extra couple of stories put on top, to be honest, I wouldn't really want it, because they would be overpowering in the setting in which they are. So things like that are not going to work. However, where these things do work, and where I encourage my mentees and other people to look, is to take a walk down your high street, take a walk down the shopping streets, and start instead of we always walk down these roads looking at the floor, making sure we don't tread on anything, and just we just got our heads down. We don't look up. And I would urge anyone listening to start looking up. And you can do this obviously on Google Street View as well. Um, but start looking up and having a look at your buildings and where the line of the top floors isn't consistent. So quite often back in the 70s and 80s, you may well have found older buildings were demolished and a smaller building perhaps put in there. I can think of a few examples where that happened with banks. They just put the bank in there and perhaps a floor above with offices, but either side, they were taller 3 or 4 story buildings. But the bank didn't need that, so the bank just built what it required. So in those sort of circumstances, those are where airspace is a lot easier, or potentially easier, because you're almost doing an infill of the airspace. So you're actually sort of leveling up the roof line, if you like, of that shopping area. So things like that, have a look at, as far as the airspace. But I think the the strongest thing I can say here, and it goes back to my earlier thing about your team, having a team around you. And as far as airspace is concerned, one of the most critical people to have around with you is a structural engineer, because you can get your permission, and which may say, yes, you can put 1 or 2 floors on the building. But if those foundations can't actually take those additional floors, then you ain't going to be building that. Or if you do, um, you'll come to regret that. So you have to make sure that your foundations can actually take that upwards growth. That may be done by sort of soil tests and stuff like this, but there are various ways they can test it or dig down, etc., to actually check the foundations. But you just need to make sure that your foundations are strong enough. It's like being in business, Patricia. If your foundations aren't right, you ain't going to go very far, and it's all going to tumble down, and you're going to regret it. So just making sure your foundations in life are right.
Okay, so thank you, Ian. So just just looking at this picture that you've painted for us, if the foundations are not, well, obviously, as you've alluded to, this would be something that a structural engineer would be able to advise on. But if the foundations are not up to scratch, what would a normal commercial solution be? Would it be underpinning? Would it be piling, for additional support,
Yeah,
or what would one do?
yeah, you're going to have to obviously strengthen those foundations at the end of the day, and the options are varied. Um, but again, it depends upon your constraints, because if you've got a typical property, do you even own the rights at the front to be able to do the stuff? It may just be at the back, and you probably don't have the ability at the sides. So again, is that practical? Is it financially viable to do it? And that's where you need to sort of get an idea, probably early on, before you start investing money in applications, engaging a planning expert, or whatever. Getting the making sure that these basics are right. And there's not much point in sort of spending, you know 50,000, 100,000, whatever it might be, improving the foundations, if all that money is just going to just swallow up any potential profit. So you know I'm not trying to evade your answer, your question, but what I would say is always get professional advice. Whatever you're doing in property, make sure, right people, right price at the right time. Just get those in place, because otherwise you'll spend a heck of a lot more. And, as you said, when people come and do a session with me, I would rather guide them on that right path and put them right than perhaps thinking, oh, well, I can do this and this and this. And some of the times I have to be blunt and honest and say, I'm afraid this isn't going to work for whatever reason. However, this might work. Have you looked at this? Because always have a plan B and a plan C. Because if you've got that building and you can't go up, for example, what else can you do with that building? Especially if you've bought the building, or you're renovating that building. What else can you do with it? What else can you maximise? Are there other permitted development rights? Can you go use Class L to go into an HMO, for example? Can you do service accommodation? Can you do co-living? Can you whatever? Are there other options that you haven't thought of? I enjoy thinking outside the box, and that's one thing I enjoy doing in life. And if I can think outside the box a little bit and come up with plans B, C, D, whatever, then perhaps you know the foundations, altering those is probably not a viable option in most cases.
Great stuff. Honestly, I've been so looking forward to this. And I'm learning, I'm learning, I'm learning from what every time you open your mouth, I'm learning, which is just great for me. But some of the things that you've stressed here, they're the reasons why I don't do those things. Because again, I love to have like peaceful nights, no stress, no whatever. And I remember a friend of mine who went into developing, and so she bought the land, and she's actually what is she? She's a civil engineer. That's it. And anyway, so they dug their foundations, and apparently the land was waterlogged, and that was such a big problem. And they had to resolve it. And I thought, well, if she didn't have the knowledge that she had, I don't know that they'd have been able to even break even on that site. Um, so it's things, it's the unknown, and the unknown just I don't like the unknown.
It
Um,
is, and I think you have to. It's getting out of the ground, which can be one of the more expensive parts. I mean, in our Westwood Ho Northern site, knowing what's beneath the ground was important to us. We have the main sewer for the entire town running through the site. We have another sewer which we are having to divert around the edge of the site. Um, and we had to sort of CAT scan the entire site to see what else is beneath the ground. So that all costs money, and will cost money to actually sort of solve and get going. But it's a case of trying to mitigate that as much as possible on any site, and to be prepared. Dig the test pits. Can you do something before you buy it? Can you actually get on there and do some surveys and stuff like that? Can you work with a vendor to actually allow you to conduct some surveys, which may sort of show up this sort of water table issue, or whatever it may be. So yeah, you may have to spend a little bit of money, but may be your saving in the long run if you suddenly discover something that will mean that the site is not viable all of a sudden, because some of these things can cost an arm and a leg, and especially if you unearth, you know, one thing I love doing is finding out a history of a site. So, because one thing you really don't want to do is suddenly start digging down and finding you're on the, you've got archaeology beneath you, and that can delay a project for a long time and cost you an awful lot of money. But again, finding out the history of a site. Has it always been a greenfield site? What was on there before? Was there contamination? Was it used as a 50 years ago as a fuel depot or something, and perhaps it's all overgrown now. what was the history of that site? Try and research that, folks, and try and discover that, because that will save you money in the longer run. Don't just turn up on a Monday morning and expect everything to be roses. It may just come and bite you in the backside.
That there is amazing advice, because lots of people now, they're just looking for land, and it's like, oh gosh, I see that land, I want to bid on it, I want it, I'm going to develop, I'm going to be a big developer, I'm going to have so many units. And you are talking about the practicalities of buying land, or taking land and building on it. Oh, so important, so important. um so Ian, what so we've spoken about PD rights and things. Is there anything in property, in development, that you particularly enjoy? And again, I'll ask the opposite side, of that question, that you don't enjoy at all, that you wished you didn't ever have to deal with.
Um, I suppose two things, and I'm going to give you an honest answer, to be honest. Two things that I thoroughly enjoy, and please don't think it makes you sound arrogant. It's not. I'm not like that as a person, as you know. But making money, I've got to be honest with you. At the end of the day, we're all in this game to make money. Because if you don't make a profit, then there's little point in actually doing it. So, making money is something that I enjoy doing. I'm not going to hide from that fact. Um, but also, and I think I mentioned it earlier, is helping others. I've always been that sort of person throughout my life. It's always sort of been someone that enjoys helping others, and actually sort of trying to put them on the right path, trying to correct them, trying to help them when they muck up. And a lot of that I can do with my own mistakes. I make, you may be sitting there thinking, oh, Ian's just got it all worked out. It's perfect, wonderful, happy days. Well, that's probably as far from the truth as you can get it, because I've made humdinger of mistakes over the last few years, um, but I learn from them, and I'm always, I'm relaunching the podcast, and the one thing I try and do on the podcast is actually, be honest with people and say, look, I've screwed up here, I've mucked up, I did this wrong, I thought that was the best part, but I've learned from it. Please don't make the same mistake I made. This is what I did wrong. This is how I corrected the mistake, and this is how I got around it, and how I've learned from it. So, you know, so that's, to me, it's another thing about helping other people. It's not me being selfish and keeping it if I can help other people. Um, and your first question was sort of, what do I hate? Um, I'm not a builder. I'm not a builder. Please don't ask me to come into your house to put a shelf up, unless you want your wall demolishing. I'm useless here. I'm useless at DIY. It's not something that I'm an expert on. I have people to do that for me in my team. So I suppose, in a way, one thing that it's not a case of hating, it's a case of perhaps struggling with a little bit, is understanding all the building technologies and all the building sort of phrases and all that. So I suppose I need to educate myself more on those sorts of things, because I don't understand it. And if I don't understand something, I sort of struggle with that particular side of the business. But it's not all about me. It's not all about Jonathan. It's about the people that work with us on site. So yes, I don't need to know, whether, stormwater pipe, is of the right dimensions or whatever. I've got the team there to plan that out and to do everything. So I suppose, in a way, I don't have to, but it's probably one thing that I do struggle with. And I'm not saying I don't enjoy it, but if I don't understand something, or have good knowledge, then perhaps I don't sit comfortably with that. So but I enjoy the journey, Patricia. I thoroughly enjoy it. I enjoy talking about it, as you can hear. Um, and I enjoy it. And actually, I enjoy making mistakes, which probably sounds a bit weird, but if I don't make mistakes, I'll not progress, and I'll not learn, and I'll not get better in whatever I'm doing. And yeah, so that's what I enjoy doing.
Philosophical as well. Right. Honestly, Ian, thank you so much. Um, we are literally going to be finishing off just in a moment. So I don't know if there's any message that you might want to give to the listeners, if at all there's something that you like to share and I've not even asked you about it, because we don't plan these things and I've not planned it, and because I think it's just best to just relax and just have a nice conversation as we have done. And I've learned so much more about you as well, which is the whole, I'm so self-indulgent, so I'm doing a podcast so I can get to know people better. Well, yeah, and people can learn as well. It's all good. So, Ian, is there anything that I've missed out that you would like to share with people?
I don't think so. I think we've covered most of it. But what I would just say to people is have confidence in yourself. When I came back into property, I I spent a shed load of money on my education. I spent a shed load of money, which, to be quite frank, I didn't have, on my mentors. And the one thing I got from them was confidence. If you'd done this, if you'd had this interview, I don't know, 5, 6, 7 years ago, whatever it was, um, you'd have been talking to a different Ian completely, because the confidence wasn't there, and the self belief wasn't there that I can actually achieve stuff. I almost reinvented. I was probably about 50 when I sort of started to reinvent myself. So I've started sort of late in life, doing that. But I suppose in a way it also proves to other people the fact that it doesn't matter how old or how young you are, you can do it. It's not too late in life, to actually start your property journey, or to resurrect it or continue it. But have confidence in yourself, have confidence in your ability to actually achieve stuff, and you will achieve stuff. And I'm confident about that. Um, and look, yes, if I can help people, great, wonderful. It's not always a case of charging people, whatever, but it's a case of being able to help people and to guide them. And half the time I'm just answering emails, from stuff. People will send me an email, and I'll send them a quick reply back. And if that helps, then great. But just have confidence in yourself. Have a confidence in your ability to progress in your journey, um, and just educate yourself. I think listening to Clubhouse is a great platform, as is Facebook, as is other stuff where you can actually ask people who document their journey, and probably do that as well. I'm bouncing around a little bit here, Patricia, but document your journey. Tell people what you do, and I mean, unfortunately, there seems to be a bug on the app at the moment, because I went in to update my profile, and it actually removed the entire profile off it. So tell people what you actually do. Um, document your journey. Take photographs. Take photographs all the time. Um, you know, do that. Do record it. Post it on Instagram. Post it on Facebook. Post it wherever. Because if people don't, they can't mind read. You said that earlier about yourself, Patricia. People can't read your mind as to what you mean, or you're saying, or what you want even. So tell people. Just tell people. Shout it from the rooftops. And if you make mistakes, hey, look, hi guys, I made a mistake. How do I fix it? And I'll bet you bottom dollar that somebody will come along and say, Mary, Fred, John, whatever your name is, you can do this, or contact this person, or contact that person, and they can help you out, and they can and solve your problems. So yeah, just ask, and yeah, and receive and help. Hope that helps, Patricia.
Definitely. Ask and you shall receive. Ian, thank you for doing this with me. And if you're in the room and you're not already following Ian, please just tap on his face and do follow him. And then if you want to be notified every time he talks, tap on the bell icon and then you'll be notified. So where will this recording be? It will be on Clubhouse for sure. It'll be under Ian's profile and it will be under mine, and it will be under Maximising Property Pound Pound Pound. So that's the club, Maximising Property Values, but Clubhouse wouldn't let me write values. So that's why it's Maximising Property Pound Pound Pound. It will be there as well. And it will also be in a podcast, which will be released on Wednesday. So Wednesday week, the podcast will be released. So if you've not already subscribed, you can subscribe through the link above, and then you won't miss it. Otherwise, just search for it; it will be there. Or go onto my website. Again, you can find it there. And next week we've got another doctor who's going to come and talk to us, Dr. Elizabeth Aitayo. She is the person behind Medics on Fire. So, everyone, thank you very much for spending your afternoon with us. And I look forward to seeing you next week. Have a great, great week. Ian, thank you very much.
No, thank you, Patricia, for the invite, and it's been a thoroughly enjoyable last hour. So, have fun, have wonderful, and document and enjoy your property journey. Thank you.